This is the Hard Thing Podcast. Today, we are overcoming average. Welcome back to another episode of the Hard Thing Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lewis, and this is the podcast that seeks to give you actionable items to deal with the trials and obstacles in your way right now. I talk with high-performing individuals and we get deep into their stories about how they overcame hard things so that way you can do the same thing in your life. And stay tuned because at the end we're going to talk about some action items that you can actually implement in your life today or this week and actually start seeing a change. Before we get to that, a couple announcements. First, I want to talk to you about Operation Underground Railroad. So a lot of you have heard me talk about them before, but they're one of my favorite organizations. I've heard the founder speak multiple times. His name is Tim Ballard, and it's a very inspiring organization because what they do is they go undercover to rescue kids from sex trafficking. You know, all those fancy movies of undercover cops and things like that. That's basically what they do. But instead of going to, downtown Los Angeles, they're going to Venezuela, Thailand. They're going to all these very interesting places. And even in the United States, I guess. I mean, in here, Utah, there was a bus just a few months ago. But they go undercover and they find these little kids, these little ones that otherwise would have no hope. And they rescue them. They bring them back to the light. They pull them out of the darkness, which is something I think every one of us needs at one point in our life. So just go over to Operation Underground Railroad at ourrescue.org. That's their website. Go over there, get to know what they do, get involved. This in no way benefits the podcast. I just really love what they do. Next, I'd like to invite you guys to take your life to the next level. And the best way to do that is by hiring a coach or a mentor. And we, the Hard Thing Podcast, has actually teamed up with some of the previous podcast guests that are coaches or mentors and some others to be able to give you an offering. So if you go to thehardthingpodcast.com/trainers, I believe in finance, fitness, and life, there are different coaching services that you can employ. And you actually get a free initial consultation just for free, like I said. And again, you can talk to Justin Aldridge, who was on the podcast, Lisa Pizik, who's a business coach. You can talk to Jennifer Sugarmeyer, as well as some who weren't on the podcast. There's Jason Laporte. He's actually the co-host. No, he's the host of the Damage Plan MMA podcast. It's a really good podcast. You should go listen to it, by the way. But you can go there, get a free consultation for them, and learn ways and actually have someone, kind of like a Yoda figure or an Obi-Wan figure. I love Star Wars, so that's the example I'm using. But go to thehardthingpodcast.com/trainers, get your free consultation today, and start leveling up your life. Now, let me tell you about today's guest. Today, I talk with entrepreneur Lady J. She is, and her full name is Jacquie Muirell, by the way. She's awesome because we talk a lot about her story of being homeless. We talk about fatal brain aneurysm. We talk about relationships. We talk about suicide, entrepreneurship, domestic violence, all these things. And it kind of sums up her story. And it's really interesting because she has gone through so many trials, but yet she's come back and I think founded 2 or 3 companies. So go ahead and listen up to my conversation with Lady J. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on my show, Lady J. I am excited to have this conversation, get to know you a little bit, and dig down deep to all the things that you've done and be able to help our audience do the same thing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Let's dive in right with the question that I ask every single guest. Lady J, what's the hardest thing you've ever done?
I would have to say tending to self. And I say that because I've lived my entire life serving others. I love to serve others. Everything that I do has to serve others in some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's personal or business. And in not tending to self and always putting others first, it cost me my life, just almost. I suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm in August of 2019. So learning how to tend to myself and putting myself first has been the hardest thing I've had to do.
Now, I'll be completely honest. I don't really know exactly what a brain aneurysm is. So please tell me a little bit more about that and what has to happen for that to occur within your brain.
So usually if you have high blood pressure, so I have struggled with that since I gave birth to my 4th child. So, and that was 10 years ago. So I've struggled with high blood pressure, hypertension. It does run in the family. When you are finding yourself, not eating, sleeping, or maybe taking in too much salt or too much stress, and it causes your blood pressure to go up, and basically all it is the blood vessel in your brain start to form a balloon. So there's blood accumulating, and then once that vessel pops, now you have bleeding on the brain. You're not supposed to be bleeding out into your brain. So essentially that's what happened to me. And let's just say only 20% of people who have ruptured brain aneurysms survive the first 24 hours. And that number only goes up a couple percentage within the first 10 days. Most people die, even after going through the surgery of either clipping or coiling. So I had a coiling done on my brain. So the brain aneurysm is still in my head. It's just coiled off, so no blood can go into that aneurysm or come out.
Wow. Okay. So it's like I guess for our listeners, it's like and this is maybe a crass way to put it, it's like a pipe burst in your brain. And rather than, fixing it or patching the leak, they like cut off flow to that specific pipe. So it's just an empty pipe that's just sitting there, nothing in or out. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the way that, and it's basically a patch, actually. Okay. Yeah. And when that happens, when that vessel ruptures, it causes then a massive stroke. So mine happened on the front left side of my head. So I couldn't speak, I couldn't walk, I couldn't, my eyes are sensitive to light. So I can't be in bright lights, sound. My ears have been affected, my right side, physical. There are so many things that come along with it, depending upon the part of your brain where it was or where it happened. So cognitive skills, things of that sort. So yeah, it's a double whammy.
Wow. Now, I want to dive into before the aneurysm. You said somewhat cryptically, I'd say that you didn't really tend to yourself that much. Describe what that looked like, just so our audience gets an idea.
So I run 3 companies. So one is a nonprofit where I serve the homeless. One is a life coaching and mentoring company. It's basically bounce back coaching is what I call it. It's not your average mentoring or life coaching program for at-risk youth and their families. And I also want to run a multimedia company. So Ego Entertainment Network, and that is a multi-division company. And so in serving the homeless and being a mom to 4 children with extracurricular activities, being mom to some kids who don't have that, going in and speaking at different schools, different after school programs, job corps, any type of program you could think of, and going to do weekly sessions, traveling all the time, with the media, doing live media coverage, red carpet events. My life was just, let's just say my schedule, it just seemed like 24/7. Okay. Phone line always open. If someone needs something, call in the middle of the night. Someone could be suicidal or having a nervous breakdown or whatever the case may be. It was a lot. And so barely sleeping, always on the get-go, thinking that, it has to be done right now, or it has to be done this way. And if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done. And this person needs me, and not thinking about taking care of self.
Right. It strikes me as kind of one of those situations where the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Like your body just couldn't keep up with what was inside. And I'm guessing that for most of the audience, an aneurysm may not be, kind of the thing that takes them down, I guess. But having situations similar to this, it's very possible. Having, gosh, what's the word? It's like, it's on the tip of my tongue, but you worked so hard that your body just can't keep up, like we just described. What are some signs that in retrospect you might have been able to pick out, and for our audience, you can point out to them and say, hey, if you're seeing these pop up, you might be headed toward the cliff, and you might want to slow down, pump the brakes a little bit, and let your body catch up?
So I know they say that hypertension is a silent killer, right? Because some people don't even know that their blood pressure is high because they don't have symptoms. For me personally, I always, most of the time I knew, because I had an excruciating headache. So whenever you have an excruciating headache, that's one sign that your blood pressure is on the verge of stroke level, or maybe you may have a brain aneurysm. Another sign for me was I started to drop the ball a lot in business, and that's just not how I do things. And so I started having a hard time getting up, getting ready. I was like super late everywhere all the time. My body was moving slow. Like I'm in my head, I'm thinking I'm moving fast, but I'm really not. Mm-hmm. I had to sleep every single day. I had to take a nap. It went from being able to go to now literally my body is saying, I'm tired. I'm getting ready to shut down. So I had to start taking a nap, and I didn't put two and two together. I thought that was weird, but I'm just like, I just need to sleep it off. It's okay. But not knowing that all this time that aneurysm was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So for me, those were the signs for me. So fatigue, extreme fatigue, constant headaches. And so constant headaches and and then just forgetting things and being so far behind in moving physically, and dropping the ball. Like those were the signs as I look back at hindsight that, hey, this is what's going on.
Wow. Now, obviously, I'm guessing after your aneurysm, in order to go back to a similar lifestyle, you've probably had to make certain changes so that way your body and it's keeping up with you and you're giving it time to rest and relax. What sort of methods or practices have you put in place to make sure that you're okay?
So life for me now is very different. So like right now I'm talking to you, I should have my glasses on, sunglasses, because the light is bothering me, but I try to do as many of these interviews without glasses on so people can see my face. Because it does cause pain. Mm-hmm. So there's some damage behind my eyes. So what I do is I have to limit my screen time. Or if I'm in light, I usually have on a hat. I have a cap so that the top part of the light coming in, mm-hmm. Doesn't mess with my eyes too much. I have to watch sounds that I'm around. Also, delegating tasks. Delegating tasks is something that I have had to implement on a maximum level. So across all businesses. And it actually has been great, because when you can find the right people to, execute those tasks, you don't really have to worry. So delegating tasks is definitely something. And then accepting that there are some things I just won't be able to do either right now or not at all anymore. So like right now with life support, I'm no longer able to go and do sessions, not at 10 different facilities. Right now I can't anyway. So outside of just speaking maybe virtually or selling books and things of that sort, the books that I've authored, that's basically as far as I go with life support outside of the Business Bangers division, which is where I teach and coach business and provide business services to entrepreneurs. So even in that, I had to scale down what I do with that. As far as some of the services that I provide, because if the services include a lot of, let's say, very intricate things or very involved things, maybe like filing a 1023 form, which is a 501c3 form, the 40-page form for a nonprofit. I can't do that, right now. So what I can do though is if you qualify for a 1023-EZ, I can do that for you, so mm-hmm. Just things like that. So I've definitely had to do that. And then I've had to stick to a strict schedule. So in maybe hosting my radio shows or running any of my companies or accepting interviews like this, I have to be very strategic. So I can't interview 4 shows back to back in a day. That would be detrimental to me. So I have to stick to a strict schedule and not have so much on my plate. So yeah, that's basically life for me. Outside of continuing like home therapy rehab. So yeah. And this is just a small part of my story. So I mean, the hard things that I've had to do, growing up and all the way up until now I guess this is just makes life come full circle. This is just another instance to where I realized that, again, everything that I go through is not just for me, but for other people, even though this was a wake up call for me.
Yeah. Kind of speaking to what you said about making sure you put buffer room in your schedule. I had a similar experience about last year for my podcast. I signed up for a program called Podcast Directory or whatever, where it connects speakers and podcasts, things like that. And I had a bunch of people interested in coming on my show, and I made the mistake of scheduling them really, really close together. I think I had 1 week of like 7 podcasts in the same week or something, on top of a full-time job. And it was just crazy. I know it's not the same scale, but like I had to do something similar where I had to scale it back. And I think it's really important that each of us kind of come to terms with, and I hate the word limits, but for lack of a better word, with our limits, like we have to know where we literally will reduce our function and functionality, and we won't be as productive or we won't be as effective. And I think we need to understand and be humble enough to accept that, so that way we can work in where is the most effective. You know what I mean?
Right. One thing that I try to do, one thing that I've always done is, in order for you to be able to, outside of dealing with a hard thing, you also have to make hard decisions in dealing with that. So, being a person who has survived a lot of trauma, so whether that be, rape or sexual abuse or homelessness, I tried to commit suicide a few times as a teenager. Outside of those things, I had to make the hard decision that, okay, either I'm going to decide to accept this state that I'm in, this mental, emotional state that I'm in, and coexist with it and just cope the rest of my life, or I'm going to choose to go through the painful experience of self-reflection and extraction and then replanting and rebuilding so that I can truly overcome it all and begin to live. So in doing that and having to do that throughout my life, as I continue to experience different traumas and hardships, making that hard decision becomes a little bit easier. But it seems though that when you go through life, sometimes it's like, okay, I've been through it all. There's nothing, that can be thrown my way now. That's going to be like, it's going to be a piece of cake. Psych, there's always something new. And so having to make that hard decision of acceptance in this particular situation for me, I think was I guess they go hand in hand. So accepting too that I'm never going to be the same. So basically grieving my old self, because I found myself comparing the old me to the new me a lot.
I think that there are 2 types of hard things in life. And I guess there's a third, which is kind of a mixture of both, but essentially there's a spectrum of hard things. And on one side, it's choice, like 100% our choice. We can choose to engage in it. We can choose to finish it. And I would compare this to starting a business, right? Some people might disagree that, they have to do the business because their heart will explode if they don't. It's just within them, but in essence, they can choose to do the hard thing or they can choose not to. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we don't have much choice. Like things happen to us because we live in, the world, and Hurricane Katrina or earthquakes or cancer, and you don't have much choice about the hard thing, but more so you have choice about your reaction to it. And I feel like you just described that spectrum very well. Sometimes you have to accept living with what you have and making the best of it. And other times you have to accept, I need to incorporate this hard thing into me, change myself and adapt and overcome. And you described that very beautifully.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree.
I wanted to circle back. I know that's a funny term, but you said delegating. And I'm really happy you mentioned that, because That is something that has been on my mind a little bit, and it's something that I personally struggle with. I'm a bit too prideful for that. But what lessons have you learned about delegating? And you mentioned also finding the right people. What lessons have you learned about finding the right people to delegate as well? I know that those are two questions, but
So, in delegating, one, I had to learn that just because they don't do it my way doesn't mean that it won't get done correctly, or it won't be, or it won't be done with the same level of quality that I would do it with. So for a lot of things, there are a lot of different ways to do several things, and then some things are done. There's a right way and a wrong way to do some things, but then some things, there's many different ways you can do it as long as you get to that point. So that's one thing that I had to learn, but I also had to learn to then start choosing people based upon their passion and purpose and what it is that I needed them to do. Because what I would do in the past is I just wanted to help everybody, want to give people opportunities. People come to me, hey, Lady J, I want to help, or I want to be a part of, ABCD. I can help you with this if you, just let me, have a show, or let me do this, So me, in wanting to help people, I had to learn that I can do that for some people, but not when it comes to having a solid team. And this is something that I already knew, but and being in business for so long, uh, these are things that but because of who I am and what my passion is in helping people and serving other people, you just want to see people succeed,
Mm-hmm.
So, but in this instance, seeing how things just stopped when I was down for 16 months was a wake-up call that, hey, Lady J, like, you teach this, to everybody else and what they need to have in place. So why are you not doing it again? Those of us who even doctors, you work on people, but then some of y'all have the worst health, or you're a mentor or a coach, or you're coaching other people, or you're a therapist, and you can fix everybody else's problems but your own. So that's kind of how I saw that. And I knew better. So I just had to learn for me, because I'm such a stickler on providing quality and being of service to other people, that I want to make sure that that's what they're getting. So in my mind, it's like, if I don't do it, then it's not going to be done right, So in learning that, I had to learn, one, they have to have a passion and a purpose for what it is that they're doing, so that they will execute it with the same compassion and the same level of quality and care that I would. And also just understanding that they don't have to do it my way when it comes to certain things. Now, certain things, of course, there's an order, you have an operational structure, right. But some tasks they can execute, coming up with their own, way of doing it, as long as it gets done.
Right. I know that speaking as an employee, I have found a lot of job satisfaction, maybe, when my manager, my boss, my supervisor, insert word here, when they have given me a task and said, I want you to go do this, let me know when it's done. And I've kind of had free reign to figure out how to do it the best. I felt personally, a lot of job satisfaction in doing that task, going back to my supervisor, presenting it to them, and then having them be impressed or happy about what I did, because they didn't think. And so I think that is, like you said, a very important lesson. Another question I wanted to ask, and maybe, you've started 3 organizations, 3 businesses, nonprofit businesses. What lessons have you learned? Because I'm guessing at some point budgets were tight, finances weren't expensive. What lessons have you learned about delegating when there's very small or no budget at all for doing that?
So one is a nonprofit, the other 2 are for-profit businesses. So when you have a team, so here's the thing: when you're building companies, it is very important, when you are building with your own personal funding out of your pocket, that you find people that want to build with you. So make sure that when you are building a company and you have people coming on your team, that what it is that you're building not only is building your company, but also building their vision and purpose as well. So if someone has the dream of owning their own virtual receptionist or administration company, virtual receptionist company, and they want to come aboard and be, your admin person, but they also know that, Lady J teaches business. It's going to be a benefit for them to join my team, because I'm going to help them not only perfect the skills that they already have, but they may learn new skills and have the opportunity to continue to advance and grow in that. So while they are helping to build my company in doing that, one, they just gained a permanent client for their business in working with me. And two, they are learning now how to build a business, a successful business as well, from someone who is doing that. So whenever you are getting people on board, and this is where bartering comes in. So what a lot of people don't know is bartering actually turns into money. You can file bartering on taxes. People don't know that in business. So yes, it's an exchange of services and goods, and if this person worked 40 hours, let's just say this person worked 40 hours, and they're receiving, let's say, $2,000 worth of services from me as far as business coaching a month. But a month with those 40 hours, they make $1,600. Let's just say they would make $1,600. Okay. So in that aspect, there's an overage. That overage then becomes what I can file on, because we've exchanged goods and services, but there are still services that, let's say, they can't pay for, but they're receiving in return for service. So a lot of people don't understand when you barter, and this is what major companies do, like a Walmart or Target and things. That people don't know that the reason that Walmart can, they can sell things at such low prices. Not only do they manufacture things, but you have opportunities to, let's say that, hey, I want to purchase toilet paper products from this company, and I'll let you sell it on my shelf for this amount, because this is the company that I'm using. So those relationships, they benefit you. They don't benefit you whether it's for a short period of time that you need or for a long term. So whenever you don't have the budget to pay somebody, you look for people that you can build with, and that you can build that you can build also while you're building with them. I always look at my quote unquote employees. I don't look at them as employees. I look at them as coworkers. So they work with me and not for me.
That's very insightful. I don't think I've ever thought about it exactly that way, because any business owner or prospective business owner listening to this can listen to that and think, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have necessarily the budget to hire this person or that person, but I do have these skills, talents, capacities, products, whatever. Maybe I could trade XYZ for what I really need. And actually, just kind of a curiosity, you sound like you have an accountancy background or tax planning background. Is that right?
So I did have to take classes in that. So I do have a degree in business management, and I have a degree in psychology as well. But when it comes to business, I have been in business development for a very long time. In the corporate world, when I used to work in the corporate world, I was always a manager, or people would call on me to build a database or create a whole division of a company, or maybe come in and actually build a company, for them. So I've done that over and over again in many different industries. I mean, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in landscaping, I've worked in real estate. I mean, a lot of different industries. Okay. And I'm only 37. People are like, what? Yes, I'm only 37. Okay. But any industry that I go into, or any industry that I'm working with, like with a client, I go and I research that. I always research the top 3 and figure out what is their model, what did they do, where did they go wrong, so that you can avoid some of those mistakes, and I can understand the ins and outs. It's kind of a skill. And then you begin to master that within that, because once you get the operational structure down of a business, then it's easy to build a strong foundation, because it's easy to set up those policies and procedures that you're going to build your company on. So, and when it comes to that, it also based upon your product or service, you have to take into account how you want to be taxed, because that's going to determine your business formation. So whether it's an LLC, a LLP, or S corporation, or any of those things. So you have to take in consideration that, yes. So it's very important for business owners to either have someone on their team, or a coach, or something that has I'll say at least basic knowledge in that area. Because when it comes to filing taxes, though, I don't like doing that. So I have someone that I pay to do that for me. So they do it for me all the time. 3 companies. I'm not going to sit there and go through all these tax paperwork. Yeah. I stay in my lane. I know what it's, what it entails and what it looks like, but I'm just going to pay you to do that. Okay. So it's okay to stay in your lane too, but to have that knowledge is very important. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a great example of really expanding your own lane, I guess, as you say it. You weren't content to just do what you needed to do and work with it. You grabbed information from other sectors, I guess you could say, other business, not business, other job descriptions, so that way you could improve yours. One curiosity I wanted to ask: what made you start businesses in the first place? Because starting a business is hard, let alone 3. So you must be a glutton for pain.
So ironically, my, even though I grew up started out in a very, my childhood was traumatic, but even though, my father and mother, they, even though they were like in a domestic violence relationship, my father, he did work. He was a carpenter. So while he worked for a company, he was also a self-subcontractor. He always got out there. If he didn't do anything else, I can say that my father did work. Okay. And he had an entrepreneurship, I'll say, spirit about himself. So outside of that, he would go do his own thing, his own contracts, contracting, doing the work for other people. So I got to see a little bit of entrepreneurship, and I didn't know that I had that, in me. I always had very good jobs at a young age, like most 19-year-olds aren't working in IU medical group, as a PSA float, working in all of the different most 19-year-olds are not doing that. You're working at Meijer or Walmart or something. Yeah. So I've always had some excellent jobs, because I've always, I'll say, performed on a very high level when it comes to education and being the best that I can. And my grandfather, he's the one that instilled in me, when you do something, you do it 100% or you don't do it at all. So I had the mindset that whenever I go in, I am going to be the asset that you wish you never let go of, or you wish you never, lost. So that's the mindset that I had whenever I went into a job. And then when I started my journey of healing from all of the trauma that I had experienced in my childhood and throughout, my teenage years and, my young adulthood, that's when I decided, okay, well, I didn't decide, let's just say it was very hard. I wrote the first book of my life story. It's a 3-part series, Life Support. And in doing that, it was very therapeutic. And then, having a conversation with God, it was like, this is your purpose. This is why I allowed these things to happen to you. So now you're going to go and you're going to use this, and you're going to help other people that are going through the same things that you went through. So that's what made me start the nonprofit. I know what it's like to be homeless as a teenager. I know what it's like to be homeless as an adult with children. I know how difficult it is, being in domestic violence relationships, all of these things, going through these traumas that put you in this situation. So that's what made me start the nonprofit organization. And because of the gift or the talents that he's given me, and how I am able to build a company with just, I think I started it with maybe $100 in my pocket. And in 90 days, I had 250 clients.
Wow.
and had the money to I had the money to help a lot of them, like make sure I had food on site all the time. People donating left and right. Got partnered with the right people who were passionate about this, where we had American Heart Association and Gentle Dentists and all these people, like in 90 days. Okay. And so whenever I tell people all the time, whenever you chase purpose, because people are out here chasing money. So when you chase purpose, the bag will chase you. That is the motto. Chase purpose and the bag will chase you. But most importantly, you do what you do out of uh, your heart and in chasing your purpose. So you're not really focused on the funds, because whatever you have, if you are smart and you're a good steward over it, then he'll stretch that into a lot. So so that's how I got started on the entrepreneurship journey. And I just knew that business, I had a very, very strong knack and a talent for business, but I also did for helping other people, which is why I went into the business management and then also psychology.
If you could, I want you to speak to a little bit of how exactly your grandfather inspired you entrepreneurially, because it seems like you've had so many traumas, so many hardship experiences through your early life.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you could just talk about your mindset, just keeping that kind of hope that, hey, if I go out and do hard work and I'm clever, smart, and I put together some sort of solution, that good things will come my way. It seems like that sort of idea it might have had a hard environment to grow up in. So how did you keep it alive, as well as your mindset? How did you keep a very forward thinking mindset alive?
Well, I would have to say that I have to give, while my grandfather did instill that mantra in me, that if you do something, do it 100% or not at all. I think it was more so my grandmother. Everything that I did. So after watching my father, work and do his thing outside of that and going out and getting it. My grandmother is the one who every time that I had a great report card, every time that I won an award, every time I was on the news singing, for show choir, everything that I did, she was so proud. She put it on display all the time. She always told me how proud of me she was and to, keep going. I just want you to be happy. It was my grandmother. My grandfather died when I was 13. So he died when I was young. He was sick for 7 years before he died. So my grandfather got sick when I was very young. So that was like maybe around 8. And then he ended up dying when I was 13. So, but my grandmother, she had, I think she encouraged me more than anybody on the face of the earth. And I kept going because of her. I think that I always wanted to make her proud. God rest her soul. So she died in 2018, or 2017, I'm sorry. But she's the one who constantly pushed me, who constantly, told me how proud of me she was and to keep going, and told me I can do it. I mean, in everything that I did. So I would more so say I have to give that credit to her.
I'm really happy you shared that, because I have the opportunity to ask a lot of people, what's the hardest thing you've ever done, dig into their story and try and figure out why, like why, with all of Lady J's background and experiences, why was she able to overcome these many things and get to this point where so many other people have, like what certain things. And in all the people I've talked to, one of the things that comes out almost every single conversation is some other person believing in them, supporting them, really seeing in them something that maybe they didn't see in themselves, or they did see in themselves, but having that outside validation is super helpful. And I guarantee you that your grandmother wasn't doing it because she thought you're going to become, she just did it because she loves you. And that's, I think, one of the most important things. And I part of me wishes that I could maybe talk to her and say, how many people were you like this for? Like, how many Lady J's did you help create in the world? You know what I mean?
So believe it or not, my grandmother, there are like, there's probably over 100 of us now, but at that time there were like 60 or 70 grandchildren. My grandmother had a lot of kids. Okay.
Wow.
She had a lot of kids, and all of her kids had multiple kids, and their kids had
Wow.
multiple kids.
Yeah.
So, I, I would say that out of all of them, I was her favorite. So me and her had a connection. I was always with her. And like the other grandkids would get so upset, you know. Some of our I'll say the first cousins would get so upset because my mother though was the baby. And so she was the baby of the kids. So she was the one that was coddled and loved on. And I was the firstborn of the baby. So so that's where
sense.
that came into. Yep. But I haven't yet to experience, even in romantic relationships, I have yet to experience someone that loves me or has loved me the way that she loved me. And what I mean by that is like an unconditional love and a genuine, consistent like love, no matter how many mistakes I made, no matter, you know, if I didn't do my best or didn't feel like I did my best, or everything that I did, she showed up for. Everything that I did, she showed up for. She always, you know, told me it was going to be okay. She comforted me without me having to ask. She could always tell when something was wrong. You know, she always, you know, checked on me. She and encouraged me all the time, telling everybody, like, I have not had that consistent type of care and push and, you know, encouragement, you know, since she passed. It's, and when I say consistent, I mean consistently. It's not, you know, life got in the way, or I'm too busy, or, you know, I got this on my mind or whatever. No, I mean, everything that I did, literally, she was, she was the closest thing you can get to the love of God. That's all. That's how I'm gonna put that. The closest thing you can get. Wow. And it sucks that she's not here anymore, because there's so many things I'm pretty sure that she would be saying, you know, and probably learning how to put on social media, my granddaughter this, my granddaughter that, you know. So if I taught her how to do it. But so yeah, I would have to say that that she definitely is. And everybody has that one person. Some people have more than one, but that was my one. So
wow. Yeah, it's having someone like that in your life is essential, excuse me. So maybe, I guess the lesson from that is we should all be a little bit more like that. And actually on that vein, you mentioned you're a mother and you're also a 3-time business owner. So what lessons have you learned about being a mother while being a business owner? And maybe not necessarily just being a mother, but working with your family, because I know that there are probably some fathers out there as well.
So my children have been an intricate part too of business. So I've taken them with me, like when serving the homeless. They love serving the homeless. Oh my God. Every time they see a homeless person, they want to give money. Mommy, can I give them my last dollar? Mommy, can I, you know, mommy, when are we going to feed the homeless? So, and they got to see and interact with some of those kids who don't have or are not as fortunate as they are. Some, you know, maybe kids who have you know, are in traumatic situations and things of that sort. So, and they are always wanting to help. So allowing them to experience and be a part of what I do, and teaching them about why I do it. And because we are Christians or believers in God, rearing them on those principles and teaching them the importance of not being a Christian, but being Christ-like is a key part in everything that I do. Because you can be a religious person, but not have relationship with God. And there's two totally different things. You can be a Christian and not be Christ-like. So those are the principles that I operate on in business, but also in being a mother and teaching my children the importance about business. Like even in business, yes, you keep, there's a professional side and then there's a personal side. You keep the two separate, yes, but still you want to operate with those same values and principles in business that you do in your personal life. You still want to be compassionate and understanding towards other people, while at the same time, delivering a product or service and standing firm on the foundation of the protocols and procedures that you put in place. So it's been a difficult thing, but always keeping my children informed and in the loop of when I have to go away, or I'm helping this child, with something, or this family with something, and teaching them about, or sharing with them why I'm doing this without giving, the person's details, keeping things confidential. And we've actually had people come into our home and live with us, who, mothers with children who didn't have anywhere to go, who were literally sleeping on the streets and things like that sort. That's the kind of mother I am. Those are the kind of things that I teach my children and allow them to see. And so even right now in their youth, they are just as compassionate and understanding and want to help other people as well.
I think that's so essential, specifically the example portion that you mentioned. I think there's a quote out there saying, some people say, I can't hear you because your actions are speaking too loud, or something like that, along the lines of, our parents, they're constantly telling us stuff, but if they're not doing what they're telling us, then we're not going to listen. And I think it's essential how you're showing them and involving them in these acts of genuine kindness and caring for these people, because that's going to be, like pillars in their formation for when they become adults. They're going to remember. I had a conversation with a podcast guest, Tyrone Smith, ex San Francisco 49er, and he talks about when he was younger, his mom and dad would always bring homeless people in, and he said he woke up one morning and there was this guy, the guy's name or his nickname was Gene Gunn, the Devil's Son. And he was sitting there eating breakfast in their kitchen. And he's like this 7 or 8 year old next to this, guy from the street who has this large reputation. And he just has that formative memory of how his parents were always bringing people in and caring for them. And I think your kids will probably end up similar down the line.
Yeah, I also think it's important too to share with your kids your flaws. So my kids know a lot of my story about the things that I went through in my childhood and why I don't let them do certain things or go certain places, or teaching them the importance of the right type of people to connect yourself with and those that you shouldn't, and, apologizing when you're wrong as a parent. I think all of those things are important too, because I don't like to paint myself as a perfect person. That I think that's the easiest way to ruin your children emotionally, because they already think that mom and daddy has all the answers, and I'm here to tell you that I don't. I'm here to tell you that I'm a mess up. I've because of the trauma that I went through in my childhood when my children were younger, they were exposed to some things that they shouldn't have been exposed to, but I didn't know any better, because the model that I had in front of me was domestic violence. It was, drugs and alcohol. It was all of these things were the examples that I had, the environment that I grew up in. And I was determined that they wouldn't do this, that they would have a different life, that they wouldn't be experiencing the same. So I had to go through a process, to learn what I needed to learn and to change that. So in doing that and constantly keeping my children abreast and sharing with them my own personal experiences, so that they know the why you shouldn't do this or why you shouldn't do that, is very important, I think, especially with the kids nowadays, because they're exposed to so many things outside of our household that if you don't teach them at home, somebody out there is going to teach them, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to teach them wrong. So,
and even sadly, inside the household, they can access almost any kind of content just from their phone. You probably won't even know. And speaking as someone who doesn't have kids yet, my wife and I, it's been Valentine's Day recently, so obviously we're talking like, what are we going to be like when we're parents and stuff like that. And if I could, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more, just because parenting is, in my opinion, it's one of the most important things we can talk about on this show, because everyone has parents and most people will become parents at some point. So they're very important, and they influence us a lot. You mentioned that you don't hide anything from your kids, and I wanted to dig deeper on that. So literally, you haven't hid any mistakes from your kids or anything like that. They know all of it, or
So I would say just about they know just
wow,
about everything. So my
wow,
kids range from age, well, my youngest son, he'll be 11 next week. So 11 to 17. So I have an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 17-year-old.
wow.
And I have learned, their grandparents, like, you telling them too much. That's just too much. And I'm like, no, they need to know these things. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah.
Especially my 17 to 16-year-old. My job is to prepare them for life as an adult. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I can't raise them to be my child forever. I mean, yes,
Mm-hmm.
they're always going to be my child, but they have to learn. If kids never see you struggle, or one thing that I try not to do is cry in front of my kids, but I'm trying to get better with that, because that's the one thing that is hard for me to do, because I don't want them
Yeah,
to worry.
yeah.
They had a very rough year and a half, almost 2 years now, because of what happened to me, and I was in the hospital. I just don't want them to worry,
Right.
but if they never see you go through hardships and see how you navigate through that, how are they going to know how to do that when it happens in their life? So if
Mm-hmm.
they can't pay a bill, or they're stressed out about about a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or their husband or wife, or a friendship, or it could
Yeah,
be anything.
yeah.
It could be anything. Somebody could try to mug them or something. Anything, God forbid. But if you don't share with them, the experiences that you went through and how you got through it, or allow them to see that while you're in it. If you're arguing, if you're having a disagreement with someone, your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend, how are they going to know the correct way to argue and fight? Because some people, they use physical force in arguments. That's not the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's what they see, they're going to think that that's how you do that. So if you don't teach them these things, if you don't say, hey, mommy struggles with this, I'm trying to get better, and I struggle with this because ABCD, then and I'm telling you not to do it. Yes, I'm doing it, but I'm doing it because I was exposed to ABCD, or this happened to me. Now it used to be worse. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's better. I'm constantly working on it. So I'm trying to keep you from going down this road because ABCD. If you explain it to your kids that way, even though it's something that you may still struggle with, because let's be real, everybody struggles with something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes us imperfect.
Yeah.
Everybody has at least one flaw. And so when you explain it to them that way, then they'll be more inclined to receive what you're saying, versus having the mindset, well, you do it, so I cannot do it. But see, a lot of parents don't go into that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so and I think it's because, one, a lot of us are either ashamed. Two, we want to pretend like, nothing is wrong, because
Right.
we don't like reliving those either traumas, or we don't like to be looked at as less than, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
or some of us aren't strong enough to withstand the opinions of other people, what I'm saying, or disappointment of our children.
Mm-hmm.
There are many different reasons why, but once you come into the realization that everybody has some type of flaw, and just because your stuff is on display doesn't mean that theirs may not be on display, or one day, or that they aren't dealing with something. Once you understand that we are all in the same boat,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that that is going to make me feel ashamed of anything I've done, any mistakes I've made, or things that happened to me, because it's made me who I am. I still have a lot of work to do. I've never, portray myself to be perfect. I'm never going to say I am perfect. God knows I have my flaws, but God also knows my heart. I know that I'm a good person at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day. And I think the greatest freedom is when you can get to the point where you can share anything about yourself, and you can share anything about yourself. And when someone else tries to use those things against you, it won't work, because I've already told it, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
on my way to telling it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing that you can say to me or about me, to someone else that's going to make me feel some type of way. And I think that's the greatest freedom. And once you get to that point, you'll be more inclined to share your story, and not just share your story, but share your journey in getting better and overcoming those things, and the times that you relapsed and went back into it and failed, mistakes you made, and all of that. So with children, it's very important. Children can sense when somebody is lying or when you fake right off the bat. They can sense it anyway. And they'll tell you to your face. You know what I'm saying? They will tell you to your face. So I think it's very important for us as parents to share the bad, the ugly and the bad, as well as the good.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, coming from someone who's not a parent, that's not as reliable or trustworthy as, someone like you who has been in the trenches and, fought the good fight. But thank you so much, Lady J, for being on my show. I've really appreciated it. How can people reach out to you, see what you're up to, support you, and so forth?
All right. No problem. Thank you for having me. So if you want to know more about me or connect with me on social media, the easiest way to do that is to go to www.ladyj.co. That's LADYJ.co. And there are buttons where you can connect with me on my social media. There are links to all of my other companies, and those websites have links to their social media pages. So there's way too many social media pages and stuff for me to just go and start listing. Also, if you want, you can contact me there as well. So just fill out the contact form. My email address is there as well. So ladyj.co would be the easiest way to do that, because if I start listing stuff, it's just going to be too much for your listeners to follow. Perfect.
And then as far as action items for our audience, based on our conversation, this is what I found. Number 1, delegate more. Number 2, understand your limits and, give yourself room within them, I guess. And number 3 is support people around you, similar to how your grandmother did to you. So did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. I would say that also in doing that and being able to delegate and support others, make sure you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Oftentimes when you are in relationship with people, whether that's business or personal or whatever the case may be, a lot of us tend to get comfortable and we get entitled. So we start out good, but then we start slacking off. We tend to lose focus. And you want to be consistent. If you want somebody to be consistent with you and what it is that you're providing or bringing to the table, and again, it doesn't matter what type of relationship it is, then you need to do the same. So nobody can get anywhere in life, professionally or personally, by themselves. At the end of the day, we have to realize that we all have differences. We all have flaws. And it doesn't do you any good to constantly harp on your own flaws or constantly try to point out the wrong and the flaws of other people. When you're not willing to, I'll say, embrace or accept the same thing that they're bringing to you. So continue to work on you, remain teachable and coachable. And at the same time, don't just point out the wrongs, but like you said, when you're encouraging and supporting other people, continue to encourage and support them too. Speak more positivity into somebody than you do bringing to them, what's wrong. That is going to take you further, especially when you are needing to delegate and build relationships with people. Especially, with the question you asked with how do you do that without the funds, of maybe business loans and things of that sort, or even in life, with kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very important that you keep that mindset.
Agreed. Awesome. I will put those up in the show notes, but thanks again, Lady J, for being here. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed this conversation. I found a lot of really good insights, and I want to go out and be a better parent, even though I'm not a parent yet. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's show. What did I tell you? Super insightful, super helpful. Some things that I took away from listening to Lady J, one of her quotes that I really found insightful was, outside of dealing with a hard thing, you also have to make hard decisions. And I think that's specifically in the case of business. And just a little bit of bonus content here for you all who listen to the very end. I love you guys. You guys are my super fans. So here's some extra stuff for you. I asked Lady J some of her top tips on starting a business. Number one is to start with a strong foundation. So set up your policies, procedures, and processes correctly. And even if you're a solopreneur, make sure you have your strong foundation in order. Make sure you have your processes nailed down, because this is going to come in handy once you start to scale. Number two, scale. Start to delegate. You need to learn what places you don't add optimal value, and you can hire someone who would add more value than you. And number three, try and keep as little debt as possible, right? 0 to very little debt as possible. And the way I categorize debt, and this is the same way in my personal life. So there's debt and then there's leverage. The way I consider debt, I guess the difference between debt and leverage is if you can't give yourself or tell yourself a positive ROI, like if I say, hey, what's your return on investment on that? Then it's not leverage, it's debt. If you don't have money coming back, it's debt. It's not leverage. This includes your house. This includes your car. If it's not paying you back, it's debt, not leverage. And you don't want any debt. Like, debt is bad. Leverage, if it's paying you, is good. That's how I categorize that. So, summing it up again. Number one, you want a strong foundation. Number two, you want to delegate. And number three, you want to keep as little debt as possible. Leverage is good as long as it has a return. Again, there's that caveat. But 0 debt. Thank you again, guys, for listening to the show. Thank you for coming back every week, listening to the Hard Thing podcast, and thank you for coming on Thursdays and listening to The Forge. I really appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you guys sharing the show with people you know and giving us ratings and reviews and trying to spread this message and hopefully helping people do more hard things and actually see bigger changes in their lives. It's a big message, and we got to share it with as many people, and I thank you guys for doing exactly that. We will see you guys back here on Thursday for our Thursday show, The Forge. Until then, keep doing hard things, because you will overcome average.